I was paying bribes. I was paying illegal payments.
We're talking about organized crime syndicate.
They are just robbing the African country for their own benefits. $70,000 US. I knew I had to come forward.
He's a cold-blooded criminal. I was fearful of my life. He directly threatened me.
I'm very high on their hit list.
This is a dangerous man that I have been dealing with. He is a wanted fugitive. He is a criminal.
My best decision is to come forward. Once you're in, and you do not get so easily out.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming, and indeed, good morning to all those who are watching the streaming version of this as well. Before I introduce our esteemed guests here, who are much more important to me, I'll just give you a little bit about myself. I run the investigative unit, or the I unit, at Al Jazeera. I was like 30 years in British television before, at the BBC, at Channel 4, British networks, before joining Al Jazeera. And I'm privileged to run a unit which is purely investigative. We don't have output, we don't have, like programs or anything that means we have a deadline there. Our deadline is when we've gathered enough information to pass the investigation, which is a great privilege. Now, obviously, some of our work is based on, confidential document drops, some on undercover work, which you saw there. But one of the biggest weapons we all have as investigative journalists, and our goal is truth-telling, obviously, are people on the inside who can tell you what's really going on. And, their role with us is absolutely critical. They give the spark that allows the fire to burn down whatever wrongdoing you may be investigating at that time. Now, one of the reasons we wanted to do this here is to draw attention to the plight of people. I mean, as the head of the unit, in the end, this falls on my lap. The fallout that these people cause on many levels, but also to themselves, and the consequences of doing such a brave act, as certainly the two people that I'm with now. So yeah, I mean, my name is Phil Rees. Next to me is Johannes Stephenson. Now, he was a whistleblower who worked with WikiLeaks. Oh, you've got a nice beard now, Zaire. I'll come to him in a minute. He worked with WikiLeaks to do a program which we called The Anatomy of a Bribe. Our investigation was released as that. And the impact of, what he did is still going on, and this was in 2019. 2 cabinet ministers in Namibia were sacked, 4 senior members of the fishing industry, because effectively what he did was reveal the corruption involving an Icelandic company that was conducting payoffs to the Namibian government and various members of it. So it was, total post-outroar. There were demonstrations in Namibia, there were demonstrations in Iceland. Furthermore, the trials are ongoing. There are criminal investigations taking place in Europe. So, we've got a great deal of results from it. I mean, thankfully, in our unit, we're about results and doing what I regard, and I don't hide from this, changing the world for the better. That's why we do this. There's no sort of objectivity or trying to balance this and that. No, we find wrongdoing, and we try to end things. And for example, we ended the golden passport scheme in Europe. As well, that was run out of Cyprus, and then the European Union ended it in Malta as well. So, that's the sort of what he's done in that story, and it was really, really magnificent. Zaire Khan, who's unable to join us here, he's actually in a safe house. He's from Bangladesh. He was central to a story we put out in early 2020 called All the Prime Minister's Men, which revealed corruption which went up to the Prime Minister. I mean, I must admit, we didn't prove that Sheikh Hasina, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, was involved in corruption, though the implication was clearly there. And we did prove that people around her, senior people, including the head of the military, head of the police, for example, and we were able to expose through Saer's documents and his actual undercover work as well, the nature or the money flows from Europe that went to pay these people off. And, you know, indeed, we talk about results. I mean, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh is now, by the way, one of the most corrupt countries in the world. I think the human rights record there has plummeted in recent years. At least, you know, a decade ago, it had a semblance of kind of democracy and you know, change of government, and that's all gone. And it's incredibly underreported as well. And Saer really did break the mold there and caused huge problems. And indeed, the protagonists, or at least the subjects of investigation, were actually, I think it was the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency that used our evidence, and we worked with Human Rights Watch in Washington, and they, based on the evidence that Zaire gathered, they've been placed under US sanctions and had certain controls over their money. And I hope that there'll be developments on that front in the European Union as well. Now, you can find out all about our stuff, by the way, on the AJI unit, ajunit.com, ajunit.com, okay? You can go there. We've got cards here if you want to, and then we've got there all of our content, which includes podcasts, includes, you know, long-form documentaries, shorter films, news content, articles, long reads. So we do, you know, we produce content for the whole breadth of Al Jazeera's output. Now, I think it's now finally time to come to our esteemed colleagues here and hear their stories. Now, a British journalist called Paul Foote said that the secret to investigative journalism was someone simply rang you up and then you wrote down what they said. Now, of course, that's a little bit of a simplification, I think. But indeed, you know, when people like Johannes and when Saer can come to you, they do bring you, in a way, the story. Obviously, we develop it, we verify it, we take steps thereafter. But one of the things I've come to realize, and this is very much a work in progress in a way, is that we have to create and institutionalize a policy to deal with whistleblowers and provide the assistance that they need. And I think that that's why we wanted to come here, to try to encourage other journalistic institutions to say, well, you know, they have a responsibility and that we need to give a kind of whistleblower pack, if you will, without sounding trite, but, you know, what kind of assistance is needed, which is, you know, legal, psychological protection. I mean, the first thing is safety, creating, you know, safe communications. So there's a whole, you know, set of things which really need to be done, which I think we're just formulating that at the moment at Al Jazeera, and it really is still work in progress. So I'd like to start with Johannes, who's here. Well, first of all, do you have any regrets? And say what impact this has had on your life.
Here, first I would like to say thank you very much for the opportunity to have this discussion, because I think it's a very important discussion, and it's very much appreciated. And it's great to be here in Italy and to meet all the good people here. I think you mentioned a little bit earlier that, you know, we are in this to see changes to better in this world, and that is quite important. And you know, to work with the media outlet as Al Jazeera and yourself, when you have that mindset and you have that mission, it makes things easier in our fight. I definitely have no regrets. This is, even though with all the challenges what I have faced, I mean, this is my far best decision I've taken in my life. Even though my life will never be the same, and you know, I live my life as I'm on the hit list. And but you know, there is a big meaning in the life when you come forward and you expose high corruption like this. And I want to see changes to better for the people in Namibia and further, and I want to see results. So definitely no regrets here.
Of course, I mean, you know, there was an attempt to kill you.
Yeah, there is from late 2016 to early 2017, there are several attempts to kill me, and it was, you know, I was lucky. There is a person from Congo who is my friend and my brother and protector, and he's in with my journey, and he is trained bodyguard. And he and his team were quite busy to keep me alive because, you know, they were sending people again and again to take me out. And often, in few occasions, there is my bodyguards with arms are just face to face with those who are sent, and those also had arms. I've been in hiding in 4 different countries within 1 year, from 2016 to 2017. I've been in a safe house in one African country, and, you know, even more, plus all the intimidations and threats and so on. And then been alleged poisoning several times from late 2016 to 2017, and even in 2018 there is a suspected poisoning attack. But fortunately it failed, but there was a minor success with it. Well, so yeah.
Your health is still affected, isn't it? Your diet, your sleep, your, you know.
Yeah, the sleep is fine, but, you know, I'm dealing with the late poisoning effects which limit my health, and I'm dealing with the pain level in my body 24/7, and it's like, you know, having 40 knives stuck in your body, but you know, depends how deep they go in, depending on the pain level rising, and, you know, there is a problem with the function of the body. There is vision problems. And many other symptoms are shaking inside, outside, and you know, the pain can be described as sharp pain, regular pain, and burning pain, and you know, so it's quite challenging to deal with these late poisoning effects, and my body doesn't tolerate food and medication just in general, so it's quite a challenging line to be on, but we are working on it, and there has been minor progress for the last year, but there is a really long road ahead, and the progress can be thanked because there are a few NGOs who started their fundraising to get me a medical assistance, and good article in Süddeutsche Zeitung about my health status, which then the ball started running, and I learned there are many good people in this world willing to help.
Well, remember what he did. You just briefly outline perhaps what you did. You revealed documents. First of all, you went to prosecutors, isn't it, that showed bribery, institutional corporate bribery of a European company in Africa, which of course is one of the, in my view, one of the diseases of our world, the corruption of Africa by the West. And remember, it's not just the Africans that are corrupt. People say that. The corrupting people, in my view, have got greater culpability for what's going on. And, you know, this was an excellent story to be released. And I think that you first of all, of course, went to the authorities, prosecutors, but then realized that the media could play a role and we could have an impact by putting it out. And I think that is true, isn't it? Just to give us a role in this. It's fine just going to prosecutors, but perhaps you could just say about that a little bit.
Yeah, you know, my main objective was always to inform the authorities and inform the authorities in Namibia. And I had a meeting with them 2 years after I left the Icelandic fishing company. That was in August 2018. I went to Namibia, and there had been some preparation for that. And I went under the radar with my protectors, and it was very important the government and the Secret Service would not know about that trip. And we met the right investigators, and I found all the comfort to say everything in that meeting. We could have met the wrong investigators. But, you know, it was always a known factor for me that the media had to be informed. It would be my duty also to inform the public, because to be quiet and not inform the Namibians, for example, it would be unfair towards them. So the media are doing excellent work to expose corruption. And in my view, it would always help to bring a better understanding on the corruption cases and to inform the public, because we would have to get the public on board, because there are many challenges for the investigators and prosecutors. And so when you start to have a public outcry for justice, that helps a lot and moves some of the obstacles, because we are against superpowers, so to say, with unlimited resources and ways to silence cases. So I was very happy with the media exposure in the late 2019 and the documentary of Al Jazeera and Anatomy of a Bribe, and also the professionalism by working around this story was fantastic and very much appreciated.
So if I bring you in here from a safe house where he's been living for the last year, I think, isn't it? Year and a bit now. He had the Bangladesh government, by the way, charged him under the Digital Security Act for carrying out anti-government activities. So basically, he can't go back to his home country. I mean, do you have regrets? I mean, I remember meeting you, remember, in an European city, and we discussed everything. Was it okay? I mean, did I handle you okay? I don't mind being honest. And, you know, what do you feel now about what's happened?
Well, thank you very much for having me over. It's an honor and privilege to be here amongst all of you. And thank you, Phil. Thank you, the organizers. So basically, in my case, I was not as fortunate as Johannes, as he mentioned, that there are correct journalists or there are right people in the country who can basically hold the powerful accountable. I come from a decent military family, decent military background. I was doing my business in Budapest, Hungary. I was a very successful entrepreneur. And by seeing my success, various Bangladeshi officials, like namely the then Chief of Army Staff of Bangladesh, General Rees, he became interested in me. He wanted me to assist his fugitive brother, that which I did not know, that he was basically a fugitive, a wanted criminal on Interpol's red warrant list, that to facilitate him with opening businesses in the like in the European Union and to oversee his activities. And when I understood the malicious intention of this individual, I started taking notes. And it was me who reached out to Al Jazeera's investigative unit, and they signed me on. I was trained and I was taught how to conduct undercover operations, and I did that. And if you see the story, there is basically two parts of this story. One is the Aziz's brother and how he has been conducting this corruption racket, and another one was the purchase of Israeli spyware by Bangladeshi intelligence authorities, which was a very risky thing to do. And I went inside covertly inside the Israeli intelligence agency's outpost in Budapest, concealing my device, recorded their activities, took out training manuals of operating those devices. So altogether, it was a very risky job to do, and I have no regrets. And well, as I told you that I have been an entrepreneur before, for this particular case, like I had to change my entire career track because I noticed that in Bangladesh is a very underreported country. Like there is not really much interest in Bangladesh. International media normally focuses on countries like around Bangladesh, but Bangladesh only becomes headline when there is a natural catastrophe or a massive scale disaster or something like that. Other than that, we have some serious corruption problems. Our people doesn't have any democratic rights at all. Like since last 8 years in Bangladesh, there have been no proper election. Like people can't vote properly. There's draconian Digital Security Act. And what is sad is international media really doesn't talk much about it. Like the way Al Jazeera have looked into it, I would say that was extraordinary, and still the kind of projects that I'm working on, it is only possible because it's Al Jazeera. But it's not only Al Jazeera's responsibility to look into such stories. There are other medias as well who always ignore Bangladesh, and I feel that this is their responsibility, because if you let it happen, look at the political polarization of Bangladesh right now. Bangladesh is a very pro-Russian, pro-China, pro-Indian country at this moment. And Sheikh Hasina is growing up to be another Lukashenko. And the world will see another strong man there. And then you will feel that, okay, something needs to be done. So I was a whistleblower. Now I have got into investigative journalism, and I have done it deliberately because some people needs to hold the powerful accountable. And if people like me doesn't come up, and if we're not supported by institutions like Al Jazeera, then what will happen to proper journalism? And how do you cover countries like Bangladesh?
I mean, obviously, you've run through the story there, so your life with your family, I mean, I think it's okay to say you're there with your family in this safe house, but it's gone through some difficult periods and still going through them, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I do not go out much. My social life is hampered because if I go out somewhere, people might notice me, and I know that they have given some kind of award for my life. I went to some cities, some people noticed me, and then I heard there were some meetings where they wanted to take me out. I went to the Bangladesh High Commission in London to submit some petition, and I noticed that they are all around. This High Commission's intelligence officials are all around. They were trying to take photograph of my car. And later on, I had to check my car if they have placed any kind of bugging device or anything as such. So they're always there. They even tried to send malwares to my phone, which I had to throw out. And such practice will be always there, but I'm not afraid.
And of course, another thing which perhaps we'll mention here is that, you know, there is a phrase that is used by certain lobby groups that, you know, basically discredit the messenger in order to discredit the message.
Well, of course, my personal character was assassinated like anything, like every day. Even it's still now, like the documentary was broadcasted in February 2021. And still now, they come up with smear campaigns, very vague, very forged news, and this kind of things. Because in Bangladesh, the news only have to cover what the government wants them to cover. Even if they want to do something otherwise, they'll not be able to do that. So even if they don't want to, they will have to publish whatever the government want them to publish, whatever the government want them to write against anyone.
I remember one outlet described Zaire as procuring women for both ISIS terrorists and Hezbollah terrorists at the same time, which I thought was quite an achievement given the fact they're against each other. But, you know, absolutely attempts to, you know, first of all, claim that you're a terrorist, that you're involved in the sex industry. I mean, you just the most unbelievable rubbish. But, you know, this came out, and I mean, I know it's maybe, you know, I had to laugh, but on the other hand, you know, this can stick. I mean, this happened to you, Johannes, as well, didn't they? They went for your personal life.
Yes, they did. You know, I've been accused to be a drug addict, alcoholic, insane, violent person, you know. And in the same time, they also accused me to be the mastermind of this corruption scheme, that it was all my doing within the company. So it's a little bit of contradiction there. And even, you know, the corruption scheme got much bigger after I left in 2016, but it ended at the end of 2019. Yes, they have gone, there's a big propagandas, you know, even putting the court documents regarding that in Zambia.
And indeed, your wife was targeted. You know, there's no limit to where these people will go to try to undermine the quality of evidence that people have. And the other aspect of what you've done, of course, is he did pay bribes. He has said that. So, you know, he has committed an offense. And, you know, the irony and the terrible, you know, I mean, I can't believe how this would possibly go through a court, but, you know, who knows in today's world, you know, when you look at Julian Assange and, you know, what others where they were going. But I think in Iceland, you're actually still a suspect, aren't you?
Yes.
In the proceedings there, which have not yet come to court.
Yeah, I hold a status of a suspect, but I did come forward in Iceland, and I am cooperating with the authorities, but unfortunately there is no law who will give you any protection. And so I expect to be prosecuted probably around next year. And in Namibia, but I hold a status, no, I'm a state witness. But I expect there will be a lot of legal challenges when I arrive there, and we expect those who are behind this big corruption scheme will try to make up some charges against me, and then of course there's a physical danger to going there.
Well, I mean, I think it would be incredible if those, you know, that prosecution was withheld. But what you found, I think, in all these countries, and in Iceland too, you could bring down one of the largest fishing companies. And by the way, this fishing company, which not many people have heard of, Saer, supplies how much of Europe's fish? I mean, it's a significant amount. I know it took about 50% of the UK. So it sells to retail, to retail entities. It's a wholesaler that then sort of moves the fish, as it were, to the stores. So we're all consuming their fish. I mean, if you're a fish eater, or at least there's a good chance, isn't it, that it's certainly a significant percentage of Europe's fish, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, they have. I think they are one of the biggest quota holders for the white fish, like cod fish and similar in Europe, and so there's a very good chance that the big portion of the Europeans who eat fish are eating fish from them.
Yeah, and they're still going on. And the point is that in a country like Iceland, I know Zaire might say that obviously it's very different in Bangladesh, and of course it is in a big way, but the influence that they have over government, over the institutions of power are significant, aren't they? They're a major employer. So there are all these other issues that are involved. And, do you think that has had impact in how you've been handled?
Yeah, I think they are trying a lot to influence the authorities in Iceland. And I believe the investigation in Iceland is going well, and I have a strong belief in the investigators in Iceland. But we will see when it goes to the court who is going to be the judge and so on, because these are the most powerful people in Iceland, and they have a connection in all levels within the authorities. So we expect challenges, and they are not. They go on with their normal life as nothing has happened, stay in the position as a chairperson for different companies and so on. So, but, we expect big challenges.
So what do you think perhaps could have been done better in handling you? And what do you think a whistleblower, what should a media organization do that would help you and would have helped you greater? And again, please, I don't need to have praise here. Look, I hope that I did what we could. But, let's just maybe list the stuff. Safe communications, that was one thing. What do you think in terms of legal advice, isn't it?
I think, in my case, I would say that I have received all that you could have asked for, like legal advice, proper, a safe housing, safe environment, and the support system that I have, and the kind of owning the whistleblower. So I was kind of owned by the institution. It was not that I was being left out or being set as an outcast or something like that. So I think it is something very unique to Al Jazeera that can be done. But when I have approached, it's not that I have not approached other organizations before I gave this story to Al Jazeera. No one really basically cared. They did listen to it, and then they were like, okay, we'll come back to you. So it was something like that. They don't really take certain things to account. So because if you just look at it, if you look into the Bangladesh segment of the corruption, if you see, you will see that in last 2 decades, Bangladesh have been one of the most corrupt countries in the world. But there have been not really any international report or any international documentary on this kind of corruptions. Even the whistleblowers have gone to such level, but they were discouraged. Maybe they were the news outlets were probably afraid or scared to do such stories, or that it will have a backlash on them or something like that. I do not know. But if there are whistleblowers approaching international news agencies, because in Bangladesh, nobody is going to entertain the whistleblowers or investigative journalists with such big pieces. So I think other institutions need to consider that how they handle these stories and how they prioritize such stories. Because if there is the story on climate change, it gets more priority than a corruption story. And I don't know, like why it's always something, it has to something to do with disasters or natural calamities or climates, because we have serious corruption problem too. So from my point of view, I would request like other news organizations to really look into this, that how can you promote people in Bangladesh to be whistleblowers or insiders and cover their stories and support the cause.
Well, certainly, look, you've mentioned Al Jazeera a few times, and obviously I have the privilege of having a decent budget because it's expensive. I mean, you've been, you know, it is, and it's very expensive. I know that a lot of other journalist institutions don't have the privilege of the kind of budget that I allocate, but, you know, I often have to fight with my boss about this, but, you know, you can't pull out of something like this. Right. You have an absolute responsibility at the end of the day. But, you know, the other thing, though, that we haven't done for you, and, you know, this has come up with another whistleblower now who has sought it, is psychological help. Now, I don't know if you needed it in any way, but that kind of counseling is something that I'm looking into now, and I'm trying to organize. And by the way, I mean, look, you know, ITV and a good friend of mine runs their current affairs department. They have just dealt with a whistleblower from another country, and, you know, they've got him in the UK, again, in a safe house, and, you know, they put him there for a year, and, you know, that's, you know, think of the cost of everything, you know, I mean, you're paying for somebody to live, and, you know, a year, and the rent, and, you know, so you're talking, you know, serious money here. Yeah. And, you know, investigative journalism is expensive. I mean, I tell my boss, it's a cost of doing business. You know, if you don't want to do it, close us down. But it is costly. But, I mean, would you, and can you be honest here, would you have liked a psychologist of some form to have been there for you, you know, and just a number confidentially?
In my case, I think I was lucky because I was in touch with some of the very good journalists of Al Jazeera, like who have kind of mentored me on site, like whenever it was required. I don't want to say their names, who have kind of mentored me on site whenever I needed something. I could call them whenever I was feeling low, because just before the broadcast, I was kind of having a nervous breakdown that, okay, oh my God, what is going to happen to me after this is being broadcasted? I think it would have happened to anyone. You will get very nervous, very paranoid that what is going to happen. And that time, if there was a professional psychologist, things could have been maybe different, but I was not really in bad hands, I would say. But of course, like, there are stages when a whistleblower would definitely need psychological consultations for the betterment of his mind and his concentration, because it's very hard to keep yourself together when you hear people are assassinating your character here and there. They're seizing your properties. They're placing police charges against you. So, yeah, any normal human being would break down. You'll have to enormously, like, psychologically stable to deal with that situation.
Because, I mean, your mother, your elderly mother, I think it's fair that you don't mind me saying, was arrested, wasn't she? And, you know, in Bangladesh, or detained and questioned. And,
my younger brother was asked.
Your brother?
My younger brother was taken.
Yeah, so, you know, you realize that you may not see your family for years, if ever, you know. And of course, it's also true, when you went into this, I mean, I think you knew, and, you know, again, I'm dealing with somebody now who I think will only be able to leave their country at the end of it if this goes ahead. And I think you didn't quite know that until they charged you for sedition under their, and, you know, I think that's when you decided that you needed to you know, to seek asylum elsewhere, because you'd be charged, and you would be killed under the sedition laws, or at least there is a death penalty.
And, before I used to live in Hungary, right, I had business there, I had a very good life there. But after the documentary was planned, and then we knew the target date and everything. And Bangladesh enjoys a very good relationship with Hungary, basically, because Viktor Orban himself is a very questionable character. I don't want to go into details here. So Viktor Orban and Sheikh Hasina are very close people. And then I didn't really think that it would be safe for me to live in Hungary, because the regime of Bangladesh is very close to Russia, Hungary, and these kind of countries who are expert in assassinating journalists or rights activists. So I moved to a safer country, and I had to ask for asylum because I needed the asylum thing. I wanted the state to protect me because I knew my life might be under threat. And they have been to my residence in Hungary, like where I used to live. They have been to my business places multiple times. I was contacted by Hungarian state secret police who wanted to interview me on the basis of the investigation. I was contacted by the local Indian embassy who wanted to talk to me to understand why I have done that. So they tried to intimidate me in every possible way that I can. And had I been living in Hungary, it would be extremely difficult to ensure my safety and security. So that is why I had to ask for asylum in a safe country.
Haven't seen or listened to the podcasts about it, part of what he revealed, he dealt with Israeli state agents, as it were, who were selling Bangladesh through Hungary, because Bangladesh and Israel have no relations as a Muslim majority country, and this goes back to obviously the formation of the State of Israel, but they used Hungary as a conduit. So he was involved in some of those deals. So you see the kind of people he was dealing with, and therefore, their behavior can often go unaccountable, let's put it that way. Though I would say that one of the good things we had, and the Haaretz newspaper was involved in that, James, and I think they actually said they would no longer sell this equipment to Bangladesh following our report. Yeah, because this has basically allowed them to IMSI catch. I don't know if you know what it means, but it's something that can basically record everyone at a demonstration, every phone communication, hundreds and hundreds simultaneously. It can act as a mass tower to basically capture it. So we revealed how Israel had sold that to the government of Bangladesh against all, international, laws on selling to a country like Bangladesh and practices. Let's throw back to Johannes. Would you have liked more psychological help? Should I have someone basically on a commission or work with us to be able to, to give you a number to deal with? Is that something I know you'd already done this prior to us meeting, but would that have been a help?
Yeah, after the last poisoning attack in early 2017, I went to Iceland and, I immediately seek a psychologist because, I also had to make sure that, my head was in order. And I've been with the psychologist since then, and it is to make sure my head is in order. It is a very good way to prevent that you are not losing your mind and you stay focused. It's not only my psychologist, it's also my advisor, and every time I go travel, we go over the security measurements, where to be, what to pay attention to, and so on. And also, you're dealing with a very challenging situation. You need to read through people's situations, and he is helping me with that, just for me to have the best understanding. So it is, in my case, much more than that, because I spend a lot of time, there's a lot of effort to make sure my head is in order. So yeah, definitely, always any support of that kind is positive, is good.
And one of the points that Saer did make earlier about corruption stories is certainly what I believe is very important, by the way. We all know how important, obviously, climate change is and all of that. But I think that corruption stories are uniquely difficult for journalists to unpack. And of course, there's some wonderful stuff by the ICIJ, and you know, they've done magnificent stuff over the years. And I know we've got people from, you know, Transparency International here who are always wonderful help and were themselves involved, I think, in the European Union adopted Whistleblower Protection Act that I do think TI were really involved in canvassing, which is terrific, by the way. So, you know, I think that the more coverage that people can get to whistleblowers, because corruption is something that really has eaten our world, and, you know, this, you know, casino capitalism that was set up in the world we live in now, and, you know, we're reading about oligarchs' money now, and, you know, it's in my view, one of the priorities for the I unit. And, you know, that indeed, as we said earlier, it requires very often people on the inside. You can get document drops, but they don't always tell the whole story. You've got to interpret them. You've got to, you know, often take it further, like we did in Anatomy of a Bribe. We set up then you know, a fake Chinese investor to do exactly what the documents had said, in order to sort of, as it were, recreate it again and give it certainly a television reality. I think, you know, television can still, I think, have a little more impact, you know, than just documents, if you know what I mean. But, you know, we're absolutely based what we did on the documents and being able to see exactly what went on in the past. Now, listen, we'll come, you know, to some questions in a minute. Just before that, Saer, you know, you want to be an investigative journalist now, do you? I mean, tell me how it's made you feel positive about yourself, perhaps, and what, you know, where you want to go from here.
Well, if you look into it this way, that as I come from Bangladesh, I will of course talk about the Bangladesh media scenario. The most media outlets in Bangladesh are owned by politically biased oligarchs. There is not really any media house that is free from their control. Maybe one or two, but still they cannot really report as they wish to report. And when these media outlets are controlled by certain politically biased oligarchs who will have political affiliation, who are donor to various political parties, they control journalists. And now these poor journalists, they have to make a living, right? Now, if they report against the regime, that report will not be run by the editors. Editors will, they doesn't encourage to make reports that goes against the statecraft. So even knowing well that everything wrong is happening, all the wrong things are done, they do see all of this nonsense, but still they cannot report. Because if they report, there will be no advertisements, their job will be at stake, and the state agencies will take them to task. So certain things are not really reported in any of the local medias because of this. And again, there is this draconian Digital Security Act. Even if you're a freelance journalist, even if you're a whistleblower, if you go, if you step forward and do any on-time report, then you will also be arrested. And by seeing all these things, and after being involved with Al Jazeera in this story, and after associating with all the journalists and being trained by the methods of journalism, I decided that as I don't have any security of my life in Bangladesh or in Hungary, and I don't really want to start doing business or anything like that, because I noticed that this is a very noble profession. This is a profession where, yes, often you might feel that it's not it's like a thankless job, but you do a lot for the people, for the community, if you do it correctly. And I felt that this is a scope for me to contribute to my society, to my country, and I decided that I will pursue investigative journalism, and that's what I'm doing.
Well, he's now part of the pantheon of enemies of the state now, haven't you? You've joined that with some other notable Bangladeshi journalists who've been forced abroad.
Yeah,
so you've
like
been placed in that category. And can I say, I think it's from your past working in the military. You've got a good analytical mind, and I think make a very, very good journalist. What about you? Final word from you, Johannes. I mean, obviously, what I find what's really cut me up spending some time with him here is how his health is still suffering. And, you know, the legacy of this is not just financial ruin. It's not just, you know, the things that you might think would just happen. You're actually suffering a health condition that, you know, and if we can help, as I say, with any medical bills here, we are going to do this. But, you know, it's like, what can we, you know, how do you feel about it now? I mean, you're still happy, you're still committed to go and give evidence. He's going to give evidence next year, and we think, is it the cases will be mature next year, they'll go to court. You know, the investigators spend ages, as you know, years doing something, which is another, I mean, we understand why law enforcement does this, the thoroughness, but it's another pressure. Do you know what I mean? You're talking years before you can get resolution. But, you know, there's no question of you of not giving evidence, and not standing up there and, you know.
We're going to finish this, you know, and I always said from the beginning, we're going to finish this, and nothing is going to stop us. We embrace every challenges we face. And, you know, I think, you know, when we as a whistleblowers, we do appreciate any support and from the media outlets, you know, I'm not necessarily talking here about some financial support or anything like that. But, you know, for example, my work with Al Jazeera has been very professional. You're always taking my safety very seriously. And in our meetings in the past, you always taken my safety very seriously. Same as when we come here, both the organizer of this event and Al Jazeera taking it very seriously. The police is informed, and we make other measures. Police is informed about my presence, and we make other measurements for my safety. This is very important, you know, because when you're speaking with people on that level and have this understanding on the challenges we are facing, it helps a lot. And also, I mean, Al Jazeera broke the story about all the poisoning and the life risks on me in late 2019, and this story has also helped me a lot because you have brought my story to the light, and this has helped me with so many matters because, you know, to have Al Jazeera writing about it and other medias, and when you're dealing with the professional journalism and respects your position as a whistleblower and your journey, and you support it, that means just a lot because, you know, we sometimes face challenges with journalists which don't respect our position as a whistleblowers, and we are just looked as a body of evidence, and that might have a negative effect on our position as a whistleblower and our journey, and could even have consequences because the arrogancy could lead to negative effect on us as a whistleblowers. But I worked with so many great journalists and really helpful for my journey and giving me information, tips about the danger, about the enemy, and so on. So I think, I mean, I really appreciate what you have been doing.
Well, you know, I tip my hat to these guys and others I'm working with. I mean, it's absolutely, and you know, you hit a point there in what you talked about before, that a lot of journalists, I mean, look, you know, we're not reporter-based what we do. You know, I don't care who the reporter is. That, you know, we're about the story and wrongdoing and hopefully trying to do something about it. And it's these guys are the heroes. And sometimes I think journalists get a little confused when they've got a big story on their hand about who's actually the star of the show. And it's, believe me, it's people like Zaire and people like Johannes who have done, you know, what, quite frankly, I don't think I could have ever done in my life. So, you know, I think it's absolutely amazing what they've done. I mean, I think we have a few minutes here left, 10 minutes. I don't know if any of you would like to ask them anything else about what we've talked about. Don't be shy. Yes? well. I mean, not from a, well, look, there are different, there are various groups that protect, that offer support to whistleblowers. Whistler in the UK, there's PLAF, isn't it? It's an African organization but I mean, I am actually trying to talk to some of my peers at the BBC. I'm very friendly with some of the British, the head of the various British investigative units, as it were. And, I think that we do need something that would be a little more institutionalized. I think it would be good to have that. And as I say, we're kind of working on that internally now, but it is very much work in progress. And, I'm slightly ashamed to say that, it seems to have been done on the hoof. And I think that it really, really does need to be thought out. And again, this is something that, it needs to be costed. And that's often what doesn't happen. People say, I've got a great story. I've got, this whistleblower, he's come to me and he's doing that, and then they're brilliant, publish. And they say, well, what about all the fallout? What about the story? Journalists go on to another story. These guys don't, Their lives are still suffering, and, the impact of that remains with them. So, again, while that sounds an odd thing to say, it's the reality of the world I live in terms of having to say, we do this. This is the story. This is the budget to my boss. Do you know what I mean? But I think that, the other matters of, look, I think we deal with safety very, we've got a lot of people who, I think we're okay with that. I think we could improve on and somebody has pointed out to me on perhaps the psychological help, the support, which, takes time. Do you know what I mean? It's obviously I've got busy people and, the amount of time they need to spend to, to find a house to do, I mean, some of that may not sound that big, but it's the logistics, it is a time consuming. Obviously time is money, and you add all of this together, that it's a fairly big, enterprise, wholly worthwhile. It has to be done. But I don't think that quite exists in the form that you say. Certainly not that I'm aware of.
I just wanted to ask, obviously there is a lot of consequences. There's mental health, there's asylum. So why do you give your face, why do you give your name and not just expose everything? And I don't know if it's possible.
Phil, can you include his questions so they can hear on live stream?
Oh, yes, sure, yeah. I mean, well, basically, the gentleman here is asking, why didn't you just simply reveal the information anonymously, as if then your identity would be hidden?
Yeah, I mean, my identity was, though the enemy, which I call the enemy, he tried to silence me before, for example, I came forward and reported the cases to authorities. And for me, it was always, I'm going to take a strong stand against them, and I'm going to go all in, and I'm going to reveal myself, because, they would anyway know it. And also just for me, just to take the strong stand against them, willing to take that fight. That was in my case.
And, if I can just add, I mean, both Zaire and Johannes brought documents, but the source of documents is easily found. You know what I mean? Even if the public doesn't know who they are, the people whose documents, who the damaging documents are from. And in fact, we talked about this, Zaire, at one time, thinking about, whether you would remain anonymous. And I think, perhaps you could explain what changed.
Yeah, sure. Basically, in my story, it was very obvious that it is me who is looking or who is the whistleblower. So if I did not show my face on camera, the world would not know who is the guy or who is the person behind it. And I did it purposefully to ensure my security as well. That if my face is shown and if anything happens to me, the world will get to know who are the people who have caused me harm or caused any damage to me. And international media would be able to hold them to account. So, but if I did not show my face, I just remained I just came with a black facade or something like that, then those people would still know that it was me, and they would just kill me somewhere, and nobody would be able to recognize that, okay, why I was killed for. But now, if any harm comes to me, we know from where it might come.
You know, I think going public is a form of protection. But I mean, I'll tell you, I mean, I don't usually talk at all about these things, but I mean, I'm dealing with someone from an authoritative, you know, pretty brutal country at the moment. And, you know, he kind of still has, in my view, a delusion that he can supply me the information he wants and be okay afterwards. And I'm going to have to tell him, you know, he's not, you know, and unless he thinks of an escape route to another country or something, you know, he shouldn't go further. And I don't think he's kind of computing that, because it's obviously not just him, it's families, it's everything. So, you know, these are tough moments in my dealing with people.
How do you handle this very delicate situation with people that want to share their knowledge about this kind of things? And what is your workflow to work with them?
Well, the very first thing we do is create safe communications. So, you know, that's it. It's usually a phone without a SIM card that we manage to get to them, you know. So, and by the way, we have a tips line on our website, ajiunit.com. Have a look through it. So, you know, some people come through that. And then if we believe that the information is valuable and you know, they're genuine, we basically say, you know, let's not talk anymore. You know, but we will, through one way or another, get you a safe device for communications. So, you know, that's absolutely the first thing. And, you know, the next thing is we go to meet them, either a member of my team or, you know, often on these situations, it's myself that goes and meets and, you know, discusses all the different things. And again, we usually try to do that in a safe location, a third country, for example, if it's in an authoritarian nation. And, you know, again, that's done. And, you know, what happened last time, you know, we do little tricks, like we organize a tour in a third country. You know, one of my team joins that tour, or two of us. They talk, you know, and then as I did recently, I watched to make sure he wasn't being followed or there wasn't anybody, you know, on his tail. And we you know, we pretended to be on this tour and therefore communicated and, you know, made that sort of open. If they had any I mean, this, you know, we're talking obviously about intelligence services here, and it may be in this instance of relevance. So, you know, we had to just make sure that there was nobody following. So, you know, I introduced myself then after observing him for, you know, for almost 2 days. And he said, yeah, I did see you. I said, well, you know, yeah, I wasn't particularly concealing myself, but I was obviously not associating with him. So, you know, that's the number one thing, is always the safety of the communications. And, you know, thereafter we have to deal with, you know, how we operate and what the evidence is and, you know, what we do and, you know, what our relationship is and, you know, what we guarantee and, you know, what, you know, there's a lot of things we can't guarantee, and anonymity is one of them. But, you know, I hope we discuss a deal, you know, I mean, I don't think we put stuff on paper, but these, you know, people know I'm as good as my word. Did we ever put anything on? I think at the end we did, Zaire, but, you know, I think we sorted it out, I think, in that hotel in Budapest, didn't we, on a handshake?
Yeah.
You know, and, you know, but that's in a way, it's got to be, you've got to build trust up. And I think that's what you need to say, isn't it? You've got to get the trust between you and that person, and that trust is fundamental. And you can't put a measure on that, can you? I mean, you can't, you know, there's no book you can read about it. You've just got to be able to convey that, I think, to these people. And, you know, hopefully I do that and try my best, although my best isn't always good enough, but I try my best. I mean, I think we're out of time. So thank you, by the way, all. I mean, thank you to these gentlemen, you know.
Thank you very much.
And yeah, if you can all help to
Thank you very much.
draw attention to whistleblowers, you know.
Thank you.
Thank you.